Hello and welcome. My name is Scarlett Brown from Dynamic Boards, and we advertise non-executive director vacancies. I am delighted to be joined here today by Jo Haigh, who is here to talk to us about her experience about being a non-executive director, and lots of experience she has in the bag too, and also her experience of founding an organisation called Onboarding Officers, which I'm very much looking forward to hearing a bit more about. Jo, thank you so much for joining us. It's such a pleasure to meet you, and I'm really looking forward to the discussion today. Should we start with the second one? Do you want to tell me a bit more about onboarding officers and how that came to be? You said before that it's your passion project. It's a labour of love. Tell me more about that before we get to hear a bit more about you and your background.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And it is my passion project. I have a business called FDS, and that's a corporate finance business, and we help people buy and sell businesses, and we help them build their businesses. And so I've seen lots of well-run boards and a lot that are not so well run. And one of the things that always struck me was, unfortunately, the dynamics of the boards could be so much better, that you tend to get the same types of people sitting around those tables, and so therefore you get groupthink. And there are all sorts of discussions, aren't there, on diversity from age and ethnicity and education and background and upbringing and social experiences, but not very often is talked about diversity of thought. Now my son is in the army. He is a major in the intelligence corps, and through living his experiences, going to various events, meeting his colleagues and peers, I met all sorts of amazing people from the military world. And while I do a lot of personal development for people who wanted to take these roles on, I've also had a number of military personnel come through those programs. And what really struck me is how different they approach business, because of course they've never sat in a traditional boardroom. They might have sat in a command room, but not a boardroom. And I realized that there's this huge pool of talent that is not exploited. And sadly, in the UK, it seems to me that the military are not treated in the same referential way that they are in other parts of the world. For instance, in America, when you exit from a senior military position in America, you're almost virtually guaranteed a seat on a board.
Yeah.
In the UK here, that is just not the case. And a lot of these people have achieved the most amazing things. They've done stuff, Scarlett, that you and I cannot imagine. Their experiences are so broad, diverse, and quite often absolutely terrifying.
Yeah.
So their approach to risk, leadership, sort of team management, strategy is entirely different to those of us that have been immersed in the civilian world. And that is what boardrooms need. They need a different way of thinking. Unfortunately, as is often the case in this situation, you've got this pool of talent, and you've got people that could really use this pool of talent, and never the two will meet. And when they do meet, they speak a different language. Because we all have our own language, whether you are a professional in law or accountancy or insurance or whatever, you have a particular language, as does the military. But business people generally don't talk the same language as the military. And so we have to find them a translation guide. That's the first thing. Then we have to provide them with a skill set that they are missing, such as governance, such as understanding a balance sheet, such as marketing. Those are things that they never, ever touch. Everything else they've got skills on. So we provide them with a translation guide, then we upskill them in this area, and then we matchmake. And we've had so much success. And of course, the skills of the military has become ever more apparent through the pandemic. How we civilians have had to call on them to help us. And those people that we know have gone into positions, their risk management through this has been exemplary, but that's just one area. And so my passion and my mission is to change the dynamics of boards and introduce these amazing men and women into those rooms to change the way boardrooms in Britain are run.
Amazing. And do you find that you're having to kind of persuade them, like, have they heard of boardrooms? Like, how much of the kind of like demystifying and like explaining to them what on earth a board is do you have to do, or are they kind of ready to go?
There is quite a bit of demystifying, but the major problem, and I don't know how strange you'll think this is, but it struck me as very odd, is how self-deprecating these senior military people are, believing less in themselves than you could believe. And they're going, I don't think I could do that, Joe. But you've done it. You've just called it something else. And this sort of temper they have of their behavior is so alien to many of the sometimes very arrogant people that you do meet in boardrooms. And then the other problem is that, of course, their CVs look entirely different to our CVs because they haven't had the executive journey. Yet if you start drilling down and looking what they've done, they have. It's just in another guise. So we have to do a little bit of shuffling around with their CV, interpretation and restatement, and then set them on their way.
Yeah, absolutely. And tell us a story, Joe, of like an example of somebody that you've helped through this, and the kinds of people that you're seeing, join the boardrooms in the UK.
Well, we've had everybody from sort of captain up to 3- and 4-star generals. We've been so privileged to meet some of the most brilliant people across all the services. And one story that resonates with me is somebody from our first cohort. And while we are a training organisation, we do surround everybody with a sort of a community. So we have what we call super neds, who are serial civilian non-execs who are there to mentor us. And then we've got ambassadors, who are people who have transitioned. And because if you're in the military, you've come from this family atmosphere, a training course in itself is never enough. You need to provide an ecosystem. And I remember this was one of the people on the first cohort. And one of the things we do, I mentioned, is we get them to revisit their CV completely, redraft it and civilianize it, but also pick out stuff that translates from what they've done into what they could do in a board meeting or in a board situation. And our CVs are very different. They're very, very, they stand out. And he was looking actually for a full-time job, but also wanted to do some non-executive work as well. And he applied to a housing association, never sat on a traditional board, is an ex-Marine, a major, and he got an interview. And the guy who interviewed him said, "You've got the interview because your CV looked so different to everybody else. We just had to see you." He got the job, but it was the CV that got him the actual interview. And then I coached him before the interview. What should you say? What should you ask? If you're asked this, how should you deal with it? And he's absolutely making so much of a difference to that board because he's bringing a brand new way of thinking.
Yeah, and it's a totally different view of what we see as diversity, right? Like, I think, we can talk about diversity a lot, but what do we actually mean?
And I think one of the most important things is to think differently. That is it's overlooked. And of course, if you're a different gender or different age or different ethnicity, by virtue of those, you're probably thinking different. But if you've been trained to think differently, to appreciate and grasp risk and opportunities differently, you'll bring about a different solution.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
As well as charm and passion.
Charm definitely does help, I think. And of course, passion as well. I mean, obviously that comes across really well in what you're saying. I mean, when you're trying to put that passion across and to the people that you're working with, like how do you sell being a non-exec to people? Like, meet someone on the street or you meet someone who's one of these programs. How do you explain to them why on earth they'd want to do what you do?
I'm so lucky, Scarlett, because throughout my career, I've held about 40 different roles on virtually every company type you could imagine as a non-exec. And that's not because, they keep sacking me. I tend to work with people towards some sort of a succession plan. And this is over a 30-year period. And I currently sit on 6 different boards. And I'm actually going to see 2 people next week who also want me to join their boards as chair. And every day is different. Why would you be a Ned? Do you like to have fun? Do you like a challenge? Do you like to help solve problems? Do you like to be a mentor? Do you want to be a coach? Do you want to be the change manager? Then these are just, it's an everyday task. And throughout the pandemic, it's been a real journey for me and for my boards, because everything turned upside down, and we had to readdress how we were dealing with everything from remote working to loss of orders, to staff morale, to income, to cash resources. And so, I was on the phone much more than I would ever be. Did I love it? I absolutely loved it, but it's hard work. And you have to have a lot of stamina, and you have to have lots of resilience. So you only do it if you love it. You're just doing it for the money, forget it. It's never going to work if you just do it for money. You've got to do it because you love every moment. And I do. And I'm very fortunate.
Absolutely. No, I totally agree. I mean, again, I very small non-exec roles myself, but just the moments where you get to feel like you're making a difference, it's just the best job in the world.
Honestly, when I get a CEO text me, which one did over the weekend, saying, "Jo, you have changed my business for the better over the last year because of what you've encouraged us to do and given us confidence to do." I mean, it's better than money, isn't it? I mean, it's just, we all need a bit of a stroke sometimes. It's just like,
Yeah,
wow.
absolutely.
Because we've all got a bit of imposter syndrome, and people look at me and go, "Jo, you do all this stuff." But we're all, so got a fragility around us. And that sort of feedback is amazing.
Definitely. And how did you end up on this journey, Jo? Where did you start? Can you remember when was your first non-exec role? How did you get talked into it?
Well, I started my own company 30 odd years ago because I've got 4 children and I wanted a degree more flexibility. And I started helping people understand how to buy and sell businesses, because that was my background. I'm a lawyer and an accountant. And so helping them understand how to get their business to the end of the journey that they're looking for. And inevitably, that was a consultative role to begin with. But then they go, "Well, we really like this, but actually, could you become a bit more involved?" And I think, well, I don't want another executive job. So it's like, can you sit on the board? And we went from sort of consultancy, coaching, mentoring to more formal non-exec. And I think the first one I ever sat on, actually, and you're just reminding me, this is way back, was a milk delivery company, I mean, door to door, but a big one, not just one man in his little van. But I don't think these even exist anymore.
But I think they're coming back. This is the weird thing. It's that everything comes full circle. Now we've got milk delivery services, because now it's sustainability, isn't it? So it's
yes, absolutely, in the glass bottles and so on. And it was a family-owned business, and that is another dimension, isn't it, to being a nerd?
Yeah.
More teddies out of the cot than when they were in the nursery. More people on the train than on GNER. So that's also part of the process of. I was talking to a group of people this morning about mediation is often very much part of the role. Peacemaker, resolution finder, and that was a family business and going through a massive period of change.
Yeah. And how has the role changed as you've been doing it over the years you've been doing it?
I think it's, first of all, how have I changed? Because I've become more and more knowledgeable about governance because of what I've learned. And as I was mentioning before to you, that I've learned from the worst as much as I have from the best. I've seen things go horrendously wrong because of poor governance processes in place, board meetings talking about, why you're parking my car parking space, and, what we're going to do about the coffee this morning because the regular coffee delivery hasn't come up, just all sorts of rubbish. So I have grown through that process and become much more aware of the importance of risk management and bringing about solid practices into boardrooms. And that's been even more exacerbated as a result of the pandemic, of course. We've all seen that our risk processes are nowhere near robust enough, with many people being unable to articulate their risk tolerances and appetite with any degree of coherence. And so that's how I think I've changed, and I've brought those best practices and policies and more structured governance to play. But I still like it to be fun.
Yeah.
You know, we do have board agendas, we do have board papers, we do have proper debates. But I always have a board dinner the night before to get to know the personalities, to get to know what's going on in people's lives, because that affects how they behave the next day. And I want to work with people I like who share my values. And where it goes wrong is if you work with companies that don't share your values. And I know from firsthand how important that is. So I would say to anybody out there who wants to be a NED, make sure you understand very clearly your value set. Mine are be kind, work hard, stay positive, have fun, which seem a strange set of values, I know, for a non-exec. People tend to think that be kind means be soft. It doesn't at all. It means be aware of other people, have a high EQ, you know, work hard. I work incredibly hard and I expect people to work hard alongside me, but that doesn't mean working every hour God sends. It means if you need to do the job, you get on with it. Stay positive. You can imagine in my world in corporate finance, Scarlett, you know, deals go like this. So we always say, you know, stay positive, something will happen. If either, you know, go through or it won't. And have fun. You know, that is a very important part of the job. If you're not enjoying it, one of my tests, Scarlett, when I'm looking to work on a board is, could I bear to spend a long haul flight in economy with the CEO?
I think that's such good advice, because I think, you know, one of the things we talk about with some of the people that we speak to through dynamic boards is that, like, how to decide whether you want a role. You know, what are the decision making frameworks, and I think that, you know, that values alignment is so important. But it's much easier to think, do I want to spend a long haul flight with this person, than to try and work out what, you know, like mapping values seems like an abstract thing, but like, would you want to get stuck on a plane with them is really helpful.
It's not about them being your best friend, but it's like, have we got things in common? Can we talk? Can we have a laugh? Can we cry together? Can we share problems? You know, in a difficult situation.
Yeah.
Anybody can do it in first class, you know, on the way to Sydney. But it's a bit more difficult, isn't it, at the back of the plane with the screaming kids around you? You know, you need to have that person who you can relate to, and that, okay, this is a bit shit, but, you know, we're going to sort it.
Yeah, and if nothing else, the last year has taught us that in spades, hasn't it? In spades. Jo, it's been fantastic, and we've covered so much ground there. But I suppose just as a last moment, any last minute moments of advice for people considering becoming non-executive directors?
So it's interesting saying this to, you know, to somebody who runs a recruitment site, but you read through the details of the job spec and the person spec, and you think, well, I can't do that. I can't do that. I can't do that. So I won't apply. Because if you don't apply, you definitely won't get it. So, you know, there are people that say, I can't do that. I won't do that. And the people that say, I can give it a go. And there are people that say, I will do that. Be that person.
I absolutely love that. I would echo that in spades. Thank you so much, Jo. It's been a real pleasure to see you and to meet you, and we'll see you again soon.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.